Welcome everybody. How are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. So today, introducing you to each other and to the world, we've got Joe Murphy, who's the Artistic Director of the Sherman. Will you give us a wave, Joe? The Sherman Theatre in Cardiff. Thank you for being with us. Then we've got Gareth Nicholls, who's the Joint Artistic Director with Debbie Hannon of the Traverse Theatre in Edinburgh. Hi, Gareth. And we've got Rebecca Mairs, who's the Literary Manager of the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. So we've got half an hour of your time. Thank you first so much for being part of the Theatre Uncut Award, for being partners on the award. We've got the Lyric joining us for the first time this year as well, which is really exciting. So welcome to the award. I'm going to start with a quick question to all of you, which is, why did you say yes to becoming a partner in the Theatre Uncut Award? Let's start with Joe.
Nice, put me right on the spot there, and unbelievable. I mean, quite simply put, the award, I think, is an extraordinary programme that uncovers extraordinary writers, and that is right at the heart of the Sherman, are those writers. That's what we want to be about as a building. We want to be about new storytellers and new stories, and this award has a prodigious history of uncovering those kind of writers. And, just from the last one, and the fact that we're trying to work together now on Mirth Stigmatist, that just feels like a no-brainer. It's essentially You Guys Rock is essentially my answer. Uncut, but it feels like you're not just allowed to say that. So it's because of the writers you guys get that feels really exciting to us, to feed us and challenge us and change the kind of stories that we're telling with our theatre.
Brilliant. So my fishing question for compliments worked. Wasn't it? So let's go to Gareth, because you were with us last year. You were part of our judging panel as well, so you're the person who's kind of been in the heart of this before. So why did you say yes again? Can't have been that bad last time.
So, I mean, the plays that we unearthed last year were just brilliant, and so many of them, and so different as well. So it feels like a bit of an honour to get to read the shortlist. 10 brilliant plays that we might not otherwise have unearthed, and that's the dead exciting part. And we've worked with you guys at Uncut for a long time, and I think political playwriting is at the heart of Scottish playwriting in many ways, so it just makes sense that we're part of this.
Please, playwrights, send your plays in. We want to read them. So Rebecca, you're joining us for the first time. You got a call out of the blue saying, do you want to be part of it? So why did you say yes?
It just feels like it's an incredible opportunity for Northern Irish playwrights, and also an incredible opportunity for me to read these incredible plays that will come out through the award. So we're always looking for partnerships and collaborations and kind of to connect kind of writers who live in Northern Ireland with theatres and other kind of writers and theatre makers across kind of the rest of the UK and Ireland. So it just was, again, a no-brainer. We felt left out. We wanted to be part of it.
Last year we were there standing at the Young Vic, who were the other partner, and spoke to Kwame Kwei-Armah earlier in this series of interviews. But we were standing there at the Young Vic doing the launch last time round, and we were like, Northern Ireland, where's Northern Ireland? And so it was the first thing that we knew that we had to do this year. So the idea of having partners stretched all across the UK is that we're encouraging writers from those areas to submit, and it's not just those specific kind of main hubs, those main urban hubs, but we know that you do such extraordinary work at reaching out across your respective countries to be able to encourage writers from all across the very edges of your country to submit their work to you, and therefore hopefully find out about opportunities like this. So yeah, super chuffed to have you all back on board again. We're midway through the first round of reading as well, so there are officially 197 plays that have come in so far, which is nearly double what we had this time last year. So yeah, we've got a big job on our hands. Cool. Let's get into the juicy stuff then. So my first question to you all is, what are the stories that are exciting you right now? Okay, at this weird, extraordinary moment in history, what are the stories that are you going to be wanting to see on your stages? I'm going to start with Rebecca.
This is a really interesting question, because I kind of it hasn't really changed from what I'm interested in and excited by anyway, which is just I love, my personal taste is I love a narrative, I love a story, I love that. It doesn't matter if it's linear, but a really, really great story and really, really interesting characters, and That's what I'm looking for now. I think, I mean, I'm very careful as well not to dissuade people from writing about what's happening now, because you will, you know, someone will have like an amazing perspective and an incredibly unique angle on the whole thing. But I suppose stories that maybe will transport us kind of out of the situation, that are really kind of imaginative and have scale of ambition, really.
Scale of ambition, yeah. Gareth, how about you?
It's stories that say something strong about the world, or ask big questions, I think, you know, and that's what it usually is. But stories that entertain and make us laugh and bring us together, I think, feel really important at the moment. I think stories written with passion as well. The world's in a bit of turmoil, so much turmoil, that we need a bit of passion to kind of cut through that. And yeah, you can always tell when a story or a play has got real passion behind it, and I think that's what I look for.
Great, bringing us together. Joe, how about you?
Well, at the sound of, at the risk of sounding incredibly pretentious, the word like protagonist, right, comes from the ancient Greek, and this always blows my mind, essentially to struggle. It means the first struggler. And I suppose that's the plays that we love, is to watch someone struggle, because I feel like whether it's COVID now, whether it's the world before, whether it's the world that's coming around the corner, the struggle is always real. And to laugh and to cry and to be moved by witnessing the struggle in others, that allows us to either understand our own struggle or the struggle of those around us, feels really magical. So that's always been at the heart of our stories. And I think the current situation in the world is only asking us to look at that even harder and even further. And I suppose the other thing that's come out a lot is the local story with a global resonance. And particularly for us being in Wales, that Welsh story that is of Wales and is rooted in Wales, but reaches for something fundamental, something universal, something human. Or that the struggle might be local but have universal implications. I suppose that's been the stories that we love to see, and we'll always love to see.
That's the heart of Theatre Uncut, isn't it? So at the beginning, when this whole company started, then the plays were about the cuts in public spending in the UK, and then suddenly people in Boston and Chicago and Berlin were doing these plays, and we were like, okay, so what resonance does that have? And then we started seeing the next year that people were doing plays about Egypt, written by an Egyptian writer in South Africa, because, you know, and suddenly this moment of togetherness across borders, across cultural heritage, across all kinds of identity, identity lines, if you like, suddenly came together, and by so many different writers. So I think for us, particularly, if I'm thinking about answering this question ourselves, that local story that speaks to the global is definitely something which we love and excites us. But then also when I think about the question, I think I kind of want to read a play that I've never seen anything like it before. So I wouldn't be able to describe, I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is. I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's this or that, or big or small or local. I don't know. Like, when I first read the winning play last year, of Two Palestinians Go Dogging, I had never read anything like that before. And the first page, I was like, great, what is this? I have no idea where this is going. Cool, so next question. I've been trying to think about putting myself in the shoes of the playwrights who are out there at the moment, and their fears and their dreams and their wishes. And one of the questions that I think may live in their minds is, what are the challenges that you see face them at the moment, and maybe thinking a little bit about how they can go about navigating those challenges at the moment. So what are the challenges for playwrights in 2020 going into 21 right now? Let's start with Gareth.
I think the biggest challenge that I've come across talking to playwrights is having a sense of hope and a sense of motivation. It feels like a really difficult time to sit down and write at the moment, because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot going on, and it's shifting, isn't it, so fast. Like on a daily basis the world is shifting, and I think that can be quite an unnerving place for a playwright, or for anyone actually. I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I think the notion that if you sit down and try to start writing but it doesn't come, that's absolutely okay. We're in a very unique period at the moment, and not being so productive, not being in the zone is okay. You know, we can come back to it later on. And And I think in terms of hope, certainly what I'm holding on to is that things will go back to normal. It might be a slightly different normal, but we're going to open as doors again, and theatre is going to exist, and potentially exist in quite an exciting new way. And that motivates me. So, hopefully it'll motivate a few playwrights to either relax a little bit and know it'll be all right, or to get them fired up for what the future brings.
And I guess knowing that we're all here ready, waiting for these plays, right? That we're all like, let's go. Okay, there's a lot of work to be done to honour what was before and what was in the mix, but that we need these stories, and we're all there, doors open. Let's go. Let's hear what you've got to say. Joe, Rebecca. Joe, let's go to you next.
Great. I thought you were saying Joe and Rebecca answer at the same time there, and we just kind of go and see which one shouts the loudest. Yeah, I think, it's so hard, isn't it? What are the challenges? I think there also are two sort of strands of challenges. There are physical challenges and there are spiritual challenges, I think. And those spiritual challenges, exactly as Gareth is talking, are one of faith, and exhaustion and anxiety and loneliness, and the creative motivation and the will to make. And then there's the physical one, right? How do you feed yourself? How do you live? How do you engage in an industry that is shut down? And on both of those, then there's so many levels about who is that playwright? Because at the moment, let's not pretend that the gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background of that writer presents different challenges for them and different barriers to overcome. So in a way, I suppose there is a challenge upon the writers, right? Which is how do you get up in the morning? How do you motivate yourself to write? How do you sit? Or how do you say, it's okay if I can't write today? How's those spiritual challenges, those questions of faith, and the theatres. But I suppose what I'm interested in is also as theatres and as institutions, what are our responsibilities? What are our challenges to our writers? How do we tell you can be a writer if you don't think you're one? How do we remove a barrier if you felt removed from that? And how do we get money in your pocket? How do we employ you? And I think it's this two-way street that I find really difficult to unpick between what's the writer's responsibility and what's our responsibility. So I think the challenge at the moment is communication, really. If we can be as porous and open as possible, and the writers can find the faith and energy to come to us and talk to us, then I think we can begin to analyse those barriers, those challenges, and to understand that they're bespoke, and that we will need to have different approaches for different writers from different backgrounds. But we're here, exactly as you said. Not only do you want to read those plays, but we want to meet those people, we want to hear you, we want to hear those problems. And I'm sure you guys will feel exactly the same, that more than ever, I would say, with COVID and with Black Lives Matter, a veil has fallen, probably too late, in my own ignorance of shame, of my own privilege and my own ignorance. But a veil has fallen about the challenges that are faced. And I think the first thing we have to overcome is we have to listen, and our artists have to talk. And then we have to provide action to help them get to those plays. That sounds slightly grand, probably, and a bit political, but I feel like the beginning challenge is like what the hell comes next, and then the challenge of how we actually practically and spiritually achieve that. But I think it only will work if we all come up with that idea together in some sort of consultation.
Yeah. So we talk loads about who those ears are that are listening. So we're all white, right? That's hidden in any way, very, very clear. And our reading panel, when we're a white, generally led organisation, predominantly, and we know that. And there's been a lot of thinking and reflection and a lot of action that we've been taking in response to everything that's going on, and not just now, it's been going on for a long, long time before that as well. But what we've been really, really careful about doing is creating a reading panel which we feel is as fairly representative as we possibly can be. Hours and hours have been spent in making that panel be a panel of people whose judgments, worldviews, perspectives across all levels are as wide as we can possibly make it. And it feels like that's part of our job as organisations as well, is to make sure that the ears that are listening and the eyes that are watching and the hearts that are reading, that are absorbing, are a very, very wide perspective of hearts and minds and ears and eyes, because only then do we get that really honest response, and then we start moving forward. And that's takes sacrifice. That takes a lot of sacrifice from a lot of people who've been in privilege for a very long time, to say, I've got to step back, I've got to step down, I've got to work harder to put other people up right now. So yeah, just in response to what you said, that feels like for playwrights to know that thought, we hope, is in a lot of the organisations' minds at the moment, and rightfully so. And Jo, as you say, far too late. Rebecca, over to you.
I mean, I don't know what more I can add to Gareth and Jo's answers, because I think the fundamental thing is how to be creative, and how to feel creative whenever the industry is closed. I think Northern Ireland is slightly different from the rest of the UK in that we are legally still not allowed to open at all as a theatre, and there's no timeline for that. So if you're an artist, you know, how do you plan? How do you kind of deal with that kind of psychologically? Also, I think, what am I writing for? Am I writing for a traditional play to be performed on a stage? Am I writing something site specific, something that will have to adhere to social distancing guidelines in terms of the performers? Am I writing for something online? I think they're all slightly different, what they'll need from that. But I just want to emphasize, like what we've just been saying, is that, and it perhaps feeds into the last question, and maybe all the other questions, is that it genuinely feels like a time when things are up for grabs. And there's no going back to normal. We don't want to go back to normal because there are issues in our theatre industry and in our society. So it feels like we can actually change things and shake things up for the better. And that's artist-led. So I think that's kind of, it's a challenge, but to look at it as an opportunity as well to fundamentally change things. And like everything Jo was saying about theatres looking at themselves and production companies looking at themselves and how they engage with all artists is something that we're doing a lot of work on as well. So just emphasising what's been said already, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about form then a bit, because you've just spoken about it there in terms of what writers are being asked to do. So this incredible moment of like revolution, transformation has come, where suddenly theatres have had to shift online. Yeah, so digital, audio, visual, and all these borders have moved from, you know, what's film, what's content, what's theatre, how is a digital play different from a film? We've started doing quite a lot of work with universities and colleges on this question, and it's totally fascinating because it's a brave new world for all of us, right? And we're all kind of feeling our way as we go. So you all have brilliant offerings. Please go on the website, everybody, of each of these theatres to see their great offerings that we've got. We've got loads of monologues of the 8 project from the Sherman. We've got the great Travis 3 new online venue that's happening at the Travis, which will be year long, the kind of festival spreading out across the year. And then we've got the work coming out of the Lyric as well, Denouement being the first, but of the audio rehearsed readings. So I just want to hear a bit about what you're expecting of your playwriting community in this new form, where it's kind of, they're going to be asked to be shapeshifters, and how that affects that relationship, all of the complexities that come inside there, because there's like contractual complexities as well as, you know, expectation. And it's not like we're going to commission you to write a play, then we're going to put it on stage. Like, that feels like, yes, that exists still, but suddenly that's a much smaller percentage of what the activity is in your buildings. So just reflecting on how you feel about this moment, about this new form, and its relationship with your playwrights. Whoever wants to go first, go first. Who's up for it? Being very polite. Jo,
well, shall I just go? Shall I go? I'll just go. Shall I go? I feel a bit assertive there going, but I'll just do it and fall on the sword. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think that it's also, as a playwright, what are you writing for? Are you writing for now, or are you writing for once the crisis has passed? Will the crisis pass? In what context will it pass? Like, how do you imagine a future? So our question, that was our big question. So we did 8. We're just doing 8 now, and then we did 10. Really imaginative on our titles there for our projects. 8 is 8 monologues, 10 is 10 monologues over the summer. And now we're doing a series called Heart of Cardiff, which is a complete audio series for the autumn, which is all kind of based on our community and the stories from our community. But that question came, it was like, I'm a little bit fed up of seeing the Zoom screen. And I'm a bit fed up of the lack of the imaginative leap that I need to make in theatre, because I'm getting so much literal information, which is why I think audio is so powerful, because it requires that imaginative leap. But I was also just really fed up of a government and a virus telling us what we could and couldn't do in the way we made work. So what we did, and I think this might be a challenge for our playwrights, is we said, let's come up with stories and assets that can work in full lockdown, in partial lockdown, or in no lockdown. But the execution will vary depending on those different scenarios. So we knew that we could commission another 10 plays, because we knew we had a plan that they could be used in any of those 3 scenarios. So there's that question for writers. Is it like, can you figure out a heart of a project that can work in anything, and it's the execution that you can manage? Is it that you want to take on this moment right here, right now? You want to challenge that? Is it that you want to challenge the partial lockdown state? Is it, there's so many questions, I think, as a writer. The first question whenever you're writing a play, I imagine, is like, what am I putting out into the world? What do I want out there, and why do I want it out there? And I think form, content, social distancing, and that stuff has to follow after that original idea and that original belief. And that we can go on a journey together to figure out execution. But I think inbuilt flexibility, inbuilt resilience, and in execution, but knowing in your heart like what you want to say, I think might be an exciting new ground to break for writers to think about their work and to say, look, this could work in a number of scenarios. Here's where I'm at, here's what I'm thinking.
A brilliant example of that was Declan, that was part of the Traverse Theatre. Annoyingly, I'm going to tell the audience about something that they can't see anymore because it's over. But hey, it was amazing because it was Mouthpiece, Kieran Hurley's Mouthpiece, then reimagined through the main character's eyes. And it was extraordinary because it just felt like a total new piece, a new form, really. Something that I'd not seen before. It wasn't a film. Didn't feel
but it's the same heart, right? The heart, I imagine, I didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but I love his writing, but I imagine it's the same heart. An execution can be malleable, but the heart has to always stay the same, really, I think.
Yeah. Gareth, you're having quite a lot of digital work come your way, so you must be seeing quite a lot of different forms.
Yeah, and I think we are, and I think that's what's really exciting is discovering and playing with new forms. We've put out audio plays, we've put out things more akin to films, we've done live streams, we're looking at VR storytelling and kind of promenade pieces through that. We're kind of exploring lots of different things, anything goes really, and we don't know where that will lead, and I find that really exciting. And I think what is at the heart of that is artists actually giving stuff a go and trying new things out. And we're in this interesting period where it's about how do we match form and content, and we're grappling with what are the right stories for these new forms, or sometimes they're not new forms either, they're just forms that we've not seen framed in a certain way. And so it's really exciting. I think the key thing at the Traverse is our new venue, Traverse 3. It's not just going to be here for the year. It's going to continue, I think, for a long, long time and run alongside the more traditional, if you want to call it that, kind of traditional theatre work where we all gather in a room and watch it. And I think once that happens, we'll see some more exciting innovations in terms of where the crossover is and how audiences interact with the different forms that we're putting out there. So I find it a really liberating time, actually, in some ways, amongst a lot, all the hard stuff that we're going through. I find it very hopeful, digital work and seeing where it leads. I think you've just got to throw yourself into it in many ways.
It's amazing seeing the multi-platform stuff as well. So Javed Alipur, when he did the Rich Kids of Tehran through the Battersea Arts Centre, and it was just reading things on different platforms at the same time, and text and image and just really basic, like the basic nuts and bolts of what storytelling is kind of broken down and then placed in different platforms was just incredible, because feeling it was one of my favorite pieces that I've seen so far, because feeling the effect that it had on me, like on my intellectual brain, on my emotions, my fear, really clicked in to different places because I was being asked to use different parts of my brain in a very similar way as theatre, obviously, but on a completely different form, with Instagram Live, Zoom, all happening simultaneously. really exciting. I feel excited by it. It also breaks my heart and makes me feel like deathly, like, I don't know, like empty sometimes too. I've got to be honest. Like sometimes wildly exciting and sometimes totally empty. But that's the days, right? Hey, it's fine. That's how we all feel at times.
You have to have permission to feel both, right? Like you have to give yourself that permission.
Yeah, and being really honest, isn't it? It's like that's how it feels. That is what this time feels like.
I personally find it very exciting. I come from a film background, so I was like, ding, ding, ding. Like, I kind of felt like I was a little bit ahead of the game. I think it shifted as well. Like, I think we're talking about artists here, but a big thing for us was like, how do we connect with our audience and be responsive to our audience and kind of put work out that they really want to see or hear. How are they feeling? So I think obviously we've been in this for 6 months now, so things have shifted. Like, you know, we've all shifted, and also what the audience wants. It's almost like taking the, you know, testing the room for things. So we completely reimagined a project that was meant to be in our Naughton studio, and we put that online. So that was really, really quick turnaround in terms of working with the writers and makers for that. I mean, we pulled it off in about a kind of month and a half, like from something that was meant to be on like in a traditional kind of theatre space to something that was entirely online. That happened really, really quickly. And I think that was something that happened a lot at the start of lockdown. There was this rush to kind of produce work and get work up and out. And I think like you were talking about before about like the contractual stuff, like the legal stuff. I think people shifted then and realizing, gosh, we're making all this work available for free. You know, how are we valuing the artist? How are we kind of, you know, emphasizing to the audience about kind of valuing the art and valuing the artist? And I think as well, we've also moved to, you know, asking people to pay to see work or hear work, or asking for donations, and that's kind of a shift that feels new. I agree about the Zoom thing. You know, there's fantastic examples of things that have been reimagined or written specifically for Zoom. It's part of the story, and I think those have been the most successful, but kind of potentially moving away from that in terms of doing kind of readings over Zoom or that over Zoom. Audio, we're focusing on audio now because it just feels like that's kind of what people, it feels really accessible. I suppose people can kind of have it on their walk, on their commute to work, back to the office that people are kind of going to, or as they kind of go around their business. So I think it's I find it really exciting. I still think we're still trying to find the form, and I think there's still a lot of room for experimentation and innovation, and I'm all up for it because, like Gareth says, it's not going to go back to normal, and we're going to be in this situation for quite a while, and I'm actually really excited to see what comes up in the next kind of few months, like what innovations or what artists are wanting to create, really.
We've been having loads of conversations with students, and it's really interesting, depending on when you were born and what technology was available to you, your perspective of this form is entirely different from our experience of talking to people. So the next generation of artists that are coming up, that are kind of like 16, 17, 18 now, they are going to explode in this because it's just part of their lives. You know, they're looking at us going, oh God, dinosaurs, come on, get on with it. Like the same with the computer game industry, that Hannah, the other half of Theatre Uncut, works a lot in computer games. And they've been working in all of these different ways for so long. And there's theatre kind of going, oh, look at this. And we're just exploring things that they've been inside for ages. But I think the exciting thing for me is that what we bring and that liveness, how does that make it different? Like, how is that different from digital content or, you know, social media content? And how is that different from the computer game narrative storytelling? And I think that's the area that I find the most exciting at the moment. But then speaking a bit about accessibility as well, we made a piece called Bubble by Kieran Hurley that was weirdly like a perfect lockdown piece because it was all filmed on people's videos on their own camera phones. But we made it way before COVID was a thing. But my mum couldn't watch it because she felt, she just was like, what, it's too much, I can't deal with it. So the accessibility, not just that you can afford a device that you can watch it on, which we've all got to be really careful about. We're talking about this being like super accessible, but it's not. It's really financially restrictive. But then also of form. I was like, my mum's going to love this. She's been to all the shows that I've done. She was like, oh no, I didn't get through 2 minutes. It was in my face. I couldn't cope. It's like, whoa, yeah, I've got to really think about that. and particularly our kind of audience bases and age and background being, you know, a big thing for us all to think about. The levels of accessibility in this conversation, I think, are amazing, and we're only just starting to discover them, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well, because I think we were talking a bit about this idea that kind of digital is there to kind of as a stopgap until we can kind of get back in the theatre. What we're actually discovering is that we're engaging with audiences that we never would have engaged with before. People are able to see the work around the world, and that's something that we're not going to throw away. We want to develop that, and we want to kind of build on that. But saying that, accessibility in terms of kind of blind and deaf audiences as well, that's something very much kind of at the forefront of our planning. And what are we doing for them? Because obviously the audio plays are great, but if you are deaf, that doesn't really kind of do anything for you. So we're trying to think of things that we can do so that all audiences will be able to enjoy the work that we're putting out.
Yeah, I think that was the thing I was going to go on to say. Hard of hearing, visually impaired, economic access. You know, it comes with its own challenges as well. And I think the other flip side of that, right, is that theatre fundamentally, right, is people being in the same room as each other, which we can't do right now, obviously. And so there is a shift in our practice, and that practice will have to feed back into the theatrical experience. Of course it will, but it's also like, how do we innovate putting people in a room together? Like, and I think that there are loads of formal and artistic innovations which are so thrilling. But I'd also just say out to those playwrights, I suppose, especially emerging playwrights, or people who haven't necessarily written plays before or thought they were plays, is that I think it's also moving towards a democratization of who the voice is and who is a playwright and what a playwright is. And I think that those sort of tectonic shifts have become even more interesting to us than the aesthetic, artistic tectonic shifts that are going on as well. Both obviously incredibly valid, but this idea of the changing storyteller and the difference that makes to everything. The way that COVID has sort of broken the theatre apart to maybe let that in is, we found possibly the most exciting part of this horrendous, devastating situation, I think. I don't know if that made any sense, but those are my thoughts.
It definitely did. Build back better, isn't it? It's the challenge whilst we all keep our ships afloat at the same time. So the Playwriting Award is for playwrights that write for stage, and we made a really strong choice about that. We read anonymously, so we have no idea who these playwrights are, which is very important to us, so that we're just going on what is on that page, and they're plays for stage rather than for any other form. So I just wanted to have a kind of brief reflection from all of you on a huge question, which is just what do you feel is unique about the playwriting culture of the country that your theatre is in, that some of you may be from and others are adopted homes. We have 3 very different countries here. We've got Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. So yeah, what are the, let's say, like, start off with just like a few words of what you feel are the unique things about your playwriting culture, the good and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful. Let's start with, I want to start with Rebecca because of her smile.
I just love Northern Irish playwrights. I think they're a pretty great bunch, and I do think that they're unique, and I feel that they're brave, they're fearless, they're not afraid to tackle really, really massive things, issues, subject matters, and funny, like a really, really dark, witty sense of humour. We do have, I mean, it is sort of infamous, and I think we are kind of also kind of maybe particular on the island of Ireland as well. Like our humour is kind of very, very dark, and that's a great vehicle through which to kind of tackle really, really kind of naughty, thorny subject matter. So like the invitation to Northern Irish playwright to go and write like a political play, they're doing it anyway. They're combating those kind of big questions and asking those really, really difficult questions and not coming up with an answer, leaving it up to us. So I hope that they'll find this like a really kind of exciting kind of proposition, because they're writing those plays anyway.
Yeah. Good stuff. Gareth, how about you?
I mean, I think there's similarities. Scottish playwriting to Northern Irish playwriting, and I suspect it goes down to Wales as well. Maybe it's a Celtic thing. It's that notion of a popular political piece of work that goes way back in Scotland to 1500s, satire of the Three Estate, right through to like Wildcat, 784, and latterly the work at the Trav with like Gregarian Way and I don't know, Mouthpiece, Ulster American, more recent pieces. And I think it's about work that is political but really entertaining, that brings people together and has humour. It's about poking fun at symbols of power, people of power, authority, and about undermining them or asking questions of them through humour. And I don't think that's necessarily unique to Scotland, but I think we do it very good in Scotland. I think pantos are a perfect example. You go to any panto in Scotland, and I do think the best pantos are in Scotland. They're political. They're so political. And they're brilliant. Even the kind of big houses, they're always having pops at one person or another. And I love it. I think it's brilliant.
I love how seriously Scotland takes panto as well. Like, we all go to the panto. Like, you got to be there. It's a night out.
Got to. Yeah, absolutely.
It's press night. It's like, it's a place.
Yeah.
So how about Wales? You're relatively new to your appointment. So how is it being in the Welsh playwriting community?
Yeah, it's totally joyous. I mean, I'm probably intensely biased, right? But they're just my favourite bunch of writers. I think that it's right in the sense that the Celtic psyche shares the broad political with the broad entertaining is certainly shared among our nations. I think what the Welsh have that has really blown me away in a slight addition is the sort of druidic mystery that sits right at their heart. And it sort of splits the voice into two in a way, which is a sort of deep, mysterious, dark and brooding voice. And then a wildly anarchic, naughty, naked on the hillside, screaming at the storm kind of energy. And when those two things intersect in Welsh playwrights, I'm just on a wild ride for that night out, with that show. And there's something indefinable at the heart of it that just is a place I haven't necessarily found that anywhere else. I've sort of lived in England most of my life, and I was born in Ireland, so I sort of straddled a lot of those incredible writers and incredible traditions. And I think that the Welsh writers, and I really, really encourage them to get submitting to this award, because it's on the cusp, I think, of defining its literary tradition in a way that perhaps Scotland and Ireland have done in a way, and they're like a bit ahead in that way. And I think Wales is just on the cusp of really starting to put its flag in the ground of what its writing means, what its soul is. And that feels like an exciting moment to be involved with.
On that note, playwrights, get submitting your plays. Please, we want to read them. Do it. Thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck and keep it up. You have some hard jobs on your hands, and so I want to say thank you from Theatre Uncut for the amazing work that you're doing on behalf of all the artists of your communities as well. Thank you so much, and see you soon.